This is Texas, right? Cows, horses, a whole lot of ranch land. But there's more to the Lone Star State than livestock.
There's a wilder side, and it can be found in forests, in caves, along the coast, even in the middle of cities.
Some species are thriving, too many are in trouble.
1 in 10,000 we expect to make it to adulthood.
It's not too late.
We can do something to change this.
Wow, that might be it.
This
is Texas. And together we can make sure interesting animals don't vanish from our state.
This animal's come back from the brink of extinction. It's amazing.
From KPRC Channel 2 and the Houston Zoo, Saving Wildlife, Texas Edition, starts now.
Hello, I'm Keith Garvin with my youngest daughter, Reagan, joining you from the new Catherine G. McGovern Texas Wetlands Habitat at the Houston Zoo, home to alligators, whooping cranes, and the majestic bald eagle.
I'm Sophia Ojeda with my girls Leora, Ella, and my niece Avery. Explore Texas with us as we learn about these animals and many more that need our help.
I'm Courtney Savala with my boys Connor and AJ, and no matter your age, you can save wildlife near and far. The journey begins right here at the Houston Zoo.
We're getting our families involved because conservation requires everyone to take action.
There are many simple things that you can do every day at home, work, and school that can make a big difference.
And whether you realize it or not, just by coming out to the Houston Zoo, spending a day here with your family, you are supporting the zoo's conservation efforts around the world. Gorillas in Rwanda, lemurs in Madagascar, elephants and orangutans in Borneo. Our zoo is working to save those animals and many more.
While there are many projects taking place on the other side of the planet, there are quite a few ways the Houston Zoo is helping species here in Texas.
Like Angel and Hayden here, a pair of whooping cranes. They're quite a sight to see up close.
At the zoo, we learned whooping cranes are the largest birds in North America.
They can grow up to 5 feet tall.
And they can have a wingspan of 7.5 feet.
To put that size in perspective, whooping cranes can stand taller than Olympic superstar Simone Biles. And when they open their wings, the span is just about as wide as former Houston Rocket Yao Ming is tall. That's a big, big bird, and we're pretty lucky because many of them spend the winter months in our state. My pal from Channel 2, Justin Stapleton, traveled down the coast to find out how this impressive animal is being saved from extinction.
In the summer in Port Aransas, families fill the coastal community to enjoy the Texas sun and surf. But in the winter, it's something else that has tourists flocking to the town.
You know, there's only a few hundred of them left in the world, and they're so big and so beautiful that it just kind of takes your breath away.
Tom and Ann Harden travel from Arkansas hoping to catch a glimpse.
Of course, the other shorebirds are great too, but the whooping cranes are the star of the show. It's a great asset to this part of Texas.
The whooping crane, a bird known for both its size and its loud call, spends summers up in Canada and winter months in Texas filling up on some of their favorite foods.
Why do you think they keep coming back here?
It's a very specific habitat that they're looking for. They're looking for the wolfberry, which is a really cool type of berry. It's basically like their chocolate, and the species of blue crab.
We went by boat with Renee Bumpus and other members of the Houston Zoo team to see the habitat in the Aransas National Wildlife Refuge for ourselves.
In the 1940s, there were only 15 whooping cranes left.
But thanks to people who took action to save them, whooping cranes come back to Texas year after year.
Okay, so first stop, we actually found a family, and we can hear the high-pitched squeal, which we know that's the baby at this point.
Yep, and we're seeing this sort of family interaction happening where the baby's soliciting for food and saying, I want that blue crab that you're eating, which I haven't actually heard before, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Sounds of hope for the species. But still, many threats remain. Habitat loss, illness, power lines, and yes, occasionally people.
The hardest part about this job is when you find out about, a shooting, whether it's accidental because of misidentification or because it's actually because someone did not have respect for life, for any life. These birds, because they're so few in number, every one of them count.
Liz Smith works for the International Crane Foundation. Her work in Texas is supported by the Houston Zoo.
We know that these birds are going to continue to expand towards Houston as the population increases. So we're very excited about, the new Texas exhibit, the fact that the whooping cranes will be there.
Teaching people about the species is something Dr. George Archibald has focused on for more than 5 decades. In the 1970s in Wisconsin, he co-founded the International Crane Foundation, and in the 80s, a bird named Tex famously bonded with Dr. Archibald. Young whooping cranes can imprint on people, and Tex had been around humans in San Antonio before being transferred to Dr. Archibald's care. Over the years, conservation groups have worked to make sure birds know how to act like, well, birds. They use puppets to teach them how to eat, crane costumes to teach them how to act, and even show them how to fly with the help of an ultralight aircraft. Extraordinary measures to save the species that's celebrated year after year at the annual Whooping Crane Festival in Port Aransas. It's an event with art.
This is the official Whooping Crane Festival shirt. The artist is here today.
Photography.
This was a picture that I took out of my car window.
Everything a birder could want to get the best view.
It's lightweight, slim design is what bird watchers are looking for.
And occasionally, even a special guest.
How happy are you to have all of these people out here supporting all of the cranes?
The festival brings together many different people who are working nonstop to save the birds.
It's an international collaboration.
Like Rona Kindup, who protects the cranes on the other end of their 2,400-mile migration route.
So protecting this population is vital to saving the species. Last year here in Aransas on the wintering grounds was 505 birds.
Up from 15.
It's quite remarkable.
That's great news for Wade Harrell, who works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
When you're working in your own backyard that you grew up in, it feels good to try to make a difference.
Wade says protecting the crane's coastal marshes can also protect people because those same marshes can reduce storm surge.
When whooping cranes do well, we're going to do well too.
For those who've dedicated their lives to saving whooping cranes, having the support of Houstonians is key to the long-term success of the species.
And we're very grateful for Houston Zoo to being a partner in helping with the field conservation.
Look at all that.
The next time you're in South Texas in the winter, keep your eyes peeled. You could see a whooping crane.
You feel kind of lucky to run into it?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's really something.
Absolutely. It's just amazing.
And if you're lucky, you might even get a hug.
Zoo guests began visiting the animals here in the Texas wetlands after a grand opening event in May. That celebration included special remarks from the zoo's president and CEO, Lee Emke, and ended with a chance for a group of school children to add the final animals to the habitat. The kids added amphipods to the water. Those tiny crustaceans will naturally help keep this wetlands ecosystem clean and healthy.
Still ahead, rescued, then released. The efforts to save sea turtles in Texas. Plus,
here at Bastrop State Park, another Texas species' best shot at survival lies within these white buckets.
And next, signs that black bears may be spreading across our state. But first, it's time to take action.
Did you know the average household uses 120 rolls of toilet paper each year, or that 27,000 trees are cut down every day just to provide toilet paper for the world? The loss of trees impacts bears, chimpanzees, wombats, and many more. So what can you do?
Take action. Use less paper and recycle what you do use. And choose paper made of recycled content.
The Houston Zoo uses toilet paper made from recycled paper, and this is an easy switch for you to do at home to help save wildlife here in Texas and beyond. Belle and Willow are two animals families love to see when they visit the Houston Zoo. In 2013, the pair of orphan cubs was being fed by patrons at a restaurant in California. Since they never learned to hunt or forage for food, these girls would not have survived in the wild. U.S. Fish and Wildlife rescued them and asked our zoo to give them a home. The boys and I have moved over to the Black Bear exhibit to talk to Senior Supervisor in the Carnivore Department, Kathy Watkins. Kathy, tell us, which bear is Belle, which bear is Willow?
Well, Belle tends to be the bigger of the two bears, and while their coats vary a little bit throughout the seasons, Belle tends to be a little bit fluffier.
Kathy, where are these black bears found in Texas?
There are some varieties on the other side of the state, but another subspecies of black bear used to be more common in East Texas, closer to us, and that's Louisiana black bear.
So they're no longer here?
Sightings are extremely rare. Hunting and habitat loss wiped out most of the population by the 1900s. But now it's believed because of growth in populations in neighboring states that black bears may start to appear more frequently again in our neck of the woods.
So that's great news.
It is good, because bears are like nature's gardeners. Since they eat plants, their droppings are full of seeds, so as they walk through the forest, they help to replant it.
What's the difference between black bears and grizzly bears?
Well, black bears are a little bit more small, and they have rounded ears, where grizzly bears have a huge shoulder hump and really long claws.
Kathy, families who come here to see Belle and Willow are helping black bears in the wild.
That's right. See them, save them. Visiting the zoo helps us support the Texas Black Bear Alliance, which works with a number of groups focused on helping black bears thrive again in Texas. Part of that involves keeping track of bear sightings when they do occur. To help, the Houston Zoo team designed signs that are being used all over Texas.
Kathy, thanks so much for sharing such great information.
You're welcome.
Hopefully soon, the black bears in Texas will be another conservation success story.
Now for some amazing animal facts. We found out black bears aren't always black. They could also have fur that's even brown or blonde. And they're omnivores. That means they eat plants and meat. And get this, they're also pretty good swimmers and will swim through water in search of fish to eat. We're barely getting started. Let's just see what kind of other animals we could learn about.
Here's something pretty cool about the Texas wetlands here at the Houston Zoo. Just a matter of weeks after water went into the habitat, wildlife started moving in on its own. Baby toads appeared throughout the water. Frogs and toads are, of course, no strangers to Southeast Texas, but there's one variety of toad that has not been seen in the Houston area since the 1970s. We're talking about the Houston toad, which is on the verge of extinction. To save them, the Houston Zoo released more than 1 million Houston toad eggs into the wild in 2018 alone. KPRC's Christine Noel journeyed with the eggs from the Houston Zoo to Bastrop State Park to see firsthand what's being done to keep this species from disappearing forever.
I think it's our responsibility to do what we can to keep this species from disappearing.
As a child, Colin Thompson was drawn to the kinds of animals that make some people squirm.
You know, it's not unique for a young boy to be interested in reptiles and amphibians. It's pretty common, but I never grew out of it.
Snakes, frogs, toads, he wanted to learn about them all.
Not everything has to be unique or cute or, you know, majestic to, you know, I think kind of deserve to exist.
And that's why, on a damp, gray April day, we followed Colin to Bastrop State Park.
If we can't keep them in this area, then they'll be gone forever as a species. I'll go ahead and move these.
Colin's work this day didn't begin in Bastrop. In fact, we met him bright and early at the Houston Zoo.
And those are the eggs?
Those are the eggs.
Right in there, okay.
Yep.
Behind the scenes at the zoo is a building where hundreds of Houston toads are producing a whole lot of tiny toad eggs. Colin says there's an average of 7,300 eggs per strand. How do they know that?
We did count every egg strand that came out for 2 years. We counted probably about 200 egg strands.
Just 4 to 5 days after the eggs are laid, they transform into tadpoles. Before the transformation, the eggs have to be moved. So once a week in the spring months, the zoo team loads up a van and heads west to Bastrop.
We're going to save the Houston toads.
Over the years, as Houston has grown and buildings have replaced open land, the Houston toad lost its home. It's been nearly 50 years since they were last seen in the city that gave them their name. Now, Bastrop State Park, with its sandy soil and canopy of trees, is one of the few places where conditions are just right for this rare amphibian.
We'll be releasing about 100,000 eggs today.
How many of them do you anticipate surviving?
It's a bit of a guess. About 1 in 10,000 we expect to reach adulthood.
Wow.
So that's not very good odds if you're one of those 10,000, but with the massive quantity that we're bringing out, it ends up being quite a few eggs out on the landscape.
With 16 buckets of eggs placed along the bank of the pond, we got to work.
I'll start a timer. and then we'll just go down the line, filling every bucket.
Every 5 minutes, we carefully placed 1 scoop of pond water into each pail.
Because the whole point really is to slowly get them used to the pond water.
Eventually, the eggs were moved from the buckets to small exclosures in the pond. If the eggs and then tadpoles manage to avoid being eaten by other animals, hopefully some will survive and become toads.
And from what I understand, it's rare for you to actually see a Houston toad out in the wild.
It's incredibly rare, yeah.
Since seeing them is incredibly difficult, researchers listen instead.
All amphibians have a distinct call. When this is picking up sound, it's really a sign of success.
A device secured to a tree records noises at night. In 2012, the year after a devastating forest fire swept through Bastrop State Park, no Houston toads were heard.
Bastrop State Park was burned catastrophically, 95% throughout the whole park.
The silence drove conservationists to work even harder, and the efforts by the Houston Zoo and their partners with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Texas State University seem to be paying off.
Last year have been the first years that we have detected Houston toads at a pre-Bastrop 2011 fire level.
For Colin, that's music to his ears.
Species have made it back from the brink of extinction. Animals have been delisted from the endangered species list, and that's the goal with Houston toads.
And fortunately for the Houston toad and all other varieties of toads and tadpoles in Texas, there are people like Colin.
I find amphibians fascinating because they're so unlike us. They don't have hair. They use their eyeballs to push food down their throats. They start life as essentially a fish, and then at some point they hop out of the water and they completely change their life cycle. So to me, it's fascinating.
Reagan and I learned that if you have a toad in your yard in the Houston area, it's almost guaranteed to be a Gulf Coast toad because they are not as picky about their habitat as the Houston toad.
The Houston toad's throat sac is dark and blue. The Gulf Coast toad's throat is tan. So if you had 2 males calling side by side, you could look at the color of their throat to tell the difference.
It will take time, but with conservation efforts, hopefully one day the Houston toad will once again be found closer to Houston.
Still ahead, evidence conservation efforts work, how these species were brought back from the brink of extinction, and later, hatching a way to save another extremely rare Texas bird before time runs out.
We've got a ton of babies right now down at the zoo.
But first, take action for animals.
Have an old cell phone or tablet at home? Maybe it's broken or outdated.
Don't put it in the trash.
Take action and recycle it.
Handheld electronics like cell phones have a material in them called tantalum. That material is made from a mineral that's mined in places in Central Africa where animals like gorillas live. Recycling electronics reduces the demand for new materials to be mined.
So recycle your old phones and save wildlife.
The Houston Zoo has a collection box in its main entrance.
Or you could mail them in. We've posted a link to more information on the zoo's electronic recycling program on clicktohouston.com/conservation. The bald eagle, a symbol not only of our country, but also an example of conservation success. This family of bald eagles lives in the woodlands, and the great news is there are many more of these beautiful birds throughout our area. While bald eagle populations are now stable, that wasn't always the case. The eagle here in the Texas wetlands is named after the first American female astronaut in space, Sally Ride.
Sally's a rescued bird. She was injured, not able to fly.
She wouldn't have survived in the wild.
And now she's here teaching families about how conservation efforts saved her species.
Look right there and look at it.
Whether at the zoo or out across Texas, the sight of a bald eagle grabs people's attention.
Wow.
When it was adopted as our national bird in 1782, there were believed to be tens of thousands of birds. But by the mid-1900s, illegal hunting, habitat loss, and a now banned pesticide known as DDT wiped out much of the population. The Houston Zoo supervisor of birds, Renee Ryan, says people realized something had to be done to save them.
In the 1940s, these are one of the first animals that we did conservation work on in the U.S.
The Bald Eagle Protection Act of 1940 was the beginning.
It makes shooting them illegal, so it's really helped their numbers to bounce back.
In the 1970s, they were put on the endangered species list, which led to more being done.
We look at where the birds are nesting and we protect that habitat. We make sure they have good habitat, and what eagles need is they need wetlands.
Today, the bald eagle is no longer endangered, but it's still protected by law.
Oh, cool. Hey, Sally.
And as more people get to see these impressive birds, like Sally, and grow inspired to keep them safe, the bald eagle population will continue to soar. While bald eagles are now doing well, that doesn't mean the conservation work stops. In 2018, the Houston Zoo collected more than 1,000 signatures to ensure the Endangered Species Act remains intact, and Texas animals like bald eagles stay protected.
Did you know bald eagles aren't bald at all? They're named after the white feathers all over their head.
When it comes to these birds, females actually go larger on average than males.
And get this, these birds of prey can hit well over 75 miles per hour while diving through the air.
That's some serious speed.
In the new Texas wetlands habitat at the Houston Zoo, American alligators bask in the sun. These reptiles were at one point endangered and nearing extinction. But there's good news for gators. Isn't that right? Chris Bednarski, thanks for joining us.
That's correct. American alligators are a wildlife success story. They were once overhunted and a lot of habitat was destroyed. So through protection, they're now thriving in all states that they're found in.
Chris, let's talk about some of the common questions you probably get every day. How do we figure out the difference between the American alligator and the crocodile?
Easiest way, alligators have a broad U-shaped face, whereas crocodiles have a pointed V-shaped face. And crocodiles' teeth are exposed even when their mouth is shut, and alligators not so much.
So we know it's alligators we have here in Texas. They've been known to show up in neighborhoods. And if you take a trip out to Brazos Bend State Park, you're guaranteed to see gators of all sizes.
And you may even see baby alligators, which are known as hatchlings. They hatch out about 6 to 8 inches long. And here's something that's really interesting. The temperature around an alligator's egg determines whether the gator becomes a boy or a girl. Babies that hatch above 90 degrees are mostly female, just a degree cooler, and you're looking at mostly boys. So our friend Nikki is introducing your boys to our 2-year-old American alligator, Brazos. When they're that size, when they hatch out and when they come to that size, a lot of different species will eat these. Once they're adults, they become apex predators, which means that they can eat anything else within the wetland habitats.
Okay, Chris, let's do a fun size comparison. How many JJ Watts would it take to equal one of the largest alligators?
One of the larger male alligators can be over 15 feet long and almost 1,000 pounds. So that would be more than 2 JJ Watts in height and more than 3 JJs in weight.
Thanks so much, Chris, for teaching us so much about the American alligator. It really is a conservation success.
You're welcome.
Check out what else we learned about these cold-blooded creatures. Scientists say that alligators have been around for more than 150 million years, somehow surviving when dinosaurs were wiped out. And get this, an alligator grows new teeth when old ones wear down. They can go through as many as 3,000 teeth in a lifetime. Whoa, that's a lot of brushing.
Still ahead,
The smell is basically their poop, right?
we dig into how bats are helping all Texans. Plus, why tunnels are being built for wildlife, like this rare cat. And later, witness the special moment 2 sea turtles that had been injured are released.
Go for it.
But first, more easy ways to take action.
Did you know the average American tosses out 185 pounds of plastic each year? A lot of it ends up in the ocean or even on the beaches where sea turtles and other marine animals mistake it as food or even get tangled in it.
That plastic pollution is responsible for as many as 100,000 marine animal deaths every year.
So what can you do? Take action.
One of the things you can do is take part in beach cleanups.
At home, you can switch to biodegradable garbage bags and reusable water bottles and use canvas bags at the grocery store.
And that can make a big difference when it comes to saving wildlife around the world.
While the sunrise along the Texas shore can be beautiful, that's not what draws hundreds, sometimes thousands of people out to the beach before daybreak. Several times during the summer months, crowds gather along the Padre Island National Seashore to witness something special: the release of baby sea turtles. Those little guys have overcome the first big hurdle they're going to face thanks to the work of conservation teams. You see, after a mom turtle lays her eggs in the sand and tries to hide them, she heads back out into the Gulf and doesn't return.
Many of the eggs become a meal for other wildlife. Others are damaged unknowingly by people driving or walking along the beach.
Since all 5 different kinds of sea turtles in the Gulf of Mexico are threatened or endangered, groups like NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Division and the Houston Zoo work to save as many of the eggs and turtles as possible. That means collecting eggs until they hatch, creating a safe area for the hatchlings to be released, and making sure injured or sick animals get medical care.
My dad and I got to be there for the recent release of 2 of those animals who had been hurt and were ready to be returned to the wild.
Journey along Blue Water Highway from Surfside Beach and you'll see the Gulf to one side, Bay Water on the other. On this day, the plan is to release 2 turtles, one on each side of the road that divides the different habitats these turtles need. Our first stop, Christmas Bay. Reagan and I were there when the Houston Zoo's lead veterinarian, Dr. Joe Flanagan, arrived in a van carrying the animals.
So this is a green sea turtle, and the other turtle that we're going to release over on the other side later is a Kemp's Ridley.
What brought this turtle to you guys?
She was a boat strike, but it happened during one of those cold, stunning events. And so when the weather gets really cold, the water is below 50 degrees, their muscles just don't work. They're reptiles, their body temperature is the ambient temperature, and so they just stop. And if a speedboat's going by, it's going to break them. And so this one had a fracture that actually even affected one of its vertebrae. If you look at the x-ray and the CT scan, this animal shouldn't be alive, and it doesn't show any compromise. It's amazing.
The Houston Zoo team cared for this green sea turtle for about 1.5 years. Visitors at the zoo got to see it and learn about it while it was recovering from its injury. Now with ID tags on its flippers so it can be identified if it appears again, the sea turtle was walked to the water's edge.
Go for it.
People fishing in the area gathered to watch with us as this turtle got used to its new surroundings. A little urging, a little motivation. A little patience followed by a little coaxing. And this green sea turtle was on its way. Wow, that might be it. And with that, we headed to the other side of the road where the sand and surf meet.
So this is a Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, and this is the most endangered sea turtle in the world.
Wow.
This turtle was caught on a fishing hook 2 weeks ago.
Dr. Joe worked in partnership with National Marine Fisheries to help this animal. They housed the turtle. He provided the veterinary care.
When I anesthetized him 2 weeks ago, took a fishing hook out.
Shortly after Dr. Joe set him down, the turtle disappeared into the waves.
There she goes.
Gone, just like that, wow.
How come we released the turtles in 2 different spots?
So because squid and shrimp and crab and grasses.
Dr. Joe explained that Kemp's Ridleys, which are the smallest species of sea turtle, love the kind of food they can find in the Gulf and along jetties. Green sea turtles thrive on the kind of vegetarian diet they find in the bay. Ooh. Dr. Joe's worked with a variety of animals since he first joined the Houston Zoo team in 1982, but turtles are among the most frequent patients for this vet.
This guy has a historical x-ray that should show a broken flipper.
In 2018, the Houston Zoo cared for 131 sea turtles. On a single morning this year, 3 turtles were brought in for x-rays.
A lot of times he swims backwards.
This turtle has been in before.
X-rays and blood samples taken for now. Then the turtles were taken back to the NOAA facility in Galveston to continue daily care. Thanks to the support of zoo guests, the Houston Zoo team can work on projects with NOAA like regular sea turtle surveys. From Bolivar to Galveston to the Surfside Jetty, they scan beaches looking for sick or injured turtles who may need help.
So what should people do if they find a turtle on the beach?
So turtles on the beach generally are in 3 circumstances. They're either a baby that's hatching, a female that's laying eggs, or any turtle that's sick or injured or dying. So there's one phone number to call. It doesn't matter why you see it. It's 866-TURTLE-5.
The Houston Zoo team installed signs along the Texas coast, making it easy for beachgoers to remember the number.
They want to know as much as they can about getting it, and then somebody will come and take care of it.
It's really important people don't pick up the turtles. First of all, it's against the law if you don't have the proper permit. Secondly, you don't want to interfere with something pretty amazing that happens when the turtles hatch. The females imprint on the beach so they can return to the same area to lay their own eggs someday. Dr. Joe says with the most endangered Kemp's Ridley turtles, awareness and protection are making a big difference in helping this species survive.
So there's been a huge improvement, and that's all because of conservation.
While sea lions are not found on the Texas coast, the Houston Zoo's sea lion team plays a big role in helping save sea turtles. After a young sea lion pup named Astro was brought to the zoo with injuries likely from being entangled, the team wanted to prevent that from happening to other animals. They put up bins along the coast that fishermen can use to recycle fishing line. They empty those bins and do regular beach and jetty cleanups. Just another way the Houston Zoo, with your support, is saving wildlife.
If you're ever lucky enough to see sea turtle hatchlings being released, turn off your camera flash and don't wear white. The hatchlings rely on the moon or sunlight shining on the water in the white foam of the waves to find their way. White clothing or flashes can confuse them, and you don't want to do anything that prevents them from making it safely to the water.
Texas is home to a variety of wildcats, but today we're here to talk about a cat that's quickly disappearing from our state, the ocelot. The only place in the United States where they can still be found in the wild is in the southern tip of Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. And there, it's estimated there are fewer than 50 ocelots left. We are joined once again by Senior Carnivore Supervisor Kathy Watkins. Kathy, tell us about this ocelot.
Well, this guy's name is Jack. He weighs in at about 47 pounds. Most ocelots are about twice the size of your typical house cat.
How do we tell the difference between a bobcat and an ocelot?
Well, their coat pattern is a little bit different. Ocelots have much more rounded ears, but the easiest way to tell the difference is to look at the tail. The ocelot has a very long tail, the bobcat has a short tail.
What's the biggest threat to ocelots?
Really, the biggest problem is habitat loss. So over 95% of the land where these cats used to be found has now been taken over by roads, farmlands, and other development. Anything that divides populations of a species reduces the animal's ability to reproduce.
What's being done to help?
Well, down in Brownsville, there's an annual Ocelot Conservation Festival and Ocelot Run, and all the funds go to letting people know about this ocelot. They're also working on planting millions of trees and a dozen wildlife corridors, which are kind of like tunnels, that have been put in to give ocelots and other animals a safe place to cross under roads.
And of course, the Houston Zoo is helping with efforts in that region.
We sure are. We've provided 10 tracking collars, which is important. It allows us to keep an eye on the movement and what the ocelots are doing.
Thanks for the chat, Kathy.
You're welcome.
And if you want to show your love for the ocelots everywhere you go, you can purchase a custom Texas license plate. The Save Texas Ocelots plate just got a new design. The cost is $30, and $22 of that goes towards supporting conservation efforts in the Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge, which is where most of the remaining ocelots live.
Still ahead, how the zoo is working with NASA to save a bird that needs its space. Plus, the benefits of bats.
It's amazing. It's nature at its best.
And later, they're not winging it. The delicate way the zoo team helps butterflies. But first, another way you can take action.
Did you know as much as 90% of the world's fisheries are fully fished or in decline? Or that improper fishing can harm the health of the ocean's natural ecosystems?
Sharks, fish, sea lions, coral reefs, and more are at risk.
So what could you do? Take action.
Choose sustainable seafood at the grocery store and restaurants. That's seafood either responsibly caught in the wild or farm raised. The Houston Zoo supports the Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch app, which helps you make the best seafood choices no matter where you are. Being informed is a great step towards saving wildlife. While families get to see many of the animals the Houston Zoo is working to save, there's one species of bird that's kept behind the scenes. The Atwater's prairie chicken is so endangered that without the Houston Zoo's efforts, it might have already gone extinct. Saving them has required a lot of hard work and collaboration. The girls and I got to see what's happening here at the zoo. But to really understand how complex these efforts are, I made 2 other stops, one to an open prairie in Eagle Lake, Texas, the other to Johnson Space Center. Space may be NASA's specialty, but it's the wide open space surrounding JSC that's playing a key role in the survival of Atwater's prairie chickens. This is where carefully selected birds are paired up each spring and given a safe place to lay their eggs.
Pretty much done the mating season now. Yeah.
Houston Zoo team members work closely with NASA to maintain the enclosures.
Yes, you're very sassy today.
And collect the eggs, which are then transported to the zoo and placed in incubators for about 26 days.
They're really cute and fluffy like this.
Amber Zelmer, who oversees this conservation program, gave us a behind-the-scenes look at the zoo's facility.
Close, huh? This guy is probably about 6 days old.
Unlike many birds, these chicks already have feathers and their eyes are open when they hatch.
They can get around a little bit faster, and so they're able to run around and hide from predators in the wild a lot sooner.
Say hi, baby.
Amber explained in spite of their name, they're not actually chickens. They're another type of bird known as a grouse.
Be very gentle.
The colors of their feathers help them hide in the prairie, which is their natural habitat.
So this is where the babies go to when they graduate and get a little bit bigger.
To get them ready to be released, the birds are moved outdoors where they can get used to the weather and eating bugs.
How do you know when they're ready to go into the wild?
Oh, that's a good question too. So really we base it on size.
After several weeks of eating and growing at the zoo, most of the birds are moved one more time here to the Atwater Prairie Chicken National Wildlife Refuge in Eagle Lake. John McGarrah is the director of the 2,400-acre refuge.
What you see when you come here is what Houston looked like 100 years ago. It's hard for people to believe because they see this wide open space and it doesn't look anything like what they've come to know Houston as.
Since it's easy to build on and farm on, only 1% of native prairie land remains, making it the most endangered landscape anywhere.
Oh, wow.
It's a serene place.
I just watch the stress dissolve on people's faces when they get out here.
And vital to the animals that live here.
And that's one of the values of this refuge is that we're preserving not just the prairie chicken, but we're preserving this native landscape.
Unfortunately, work to increase the number of birds in the wild got washed out by Hurricane Harvey.
We were down to, I think, around 40 birds because the reserve flooded.
While there's always the risk of another storm, U.S. Fish and Wildlife does what it can at the refuge to reduce other threats. Predator birds looking for a prairie chicken as a meal will find there's no good place to perch. And much of the land here is treated for fire ants because the invasive insects eat the same bugs the chicks need for nourishment. Every year, more birds are brought here by the Houston Zoo. They're placed in acclimation pens at the refuge and given the chance to slowly get used to prairie life.
And through that captive breeding program, we've been able to put those birds back out on the landscape.
John recommends coming out to the refuge at sunrise for the best chance at seeing this critically endangered native bird. Visit in the spring during breeding season, and you might even witness the males dancing and making their signature booming sounds through the grasses. The Houston Zoo staff reintroduced 224 prairie chickens back into the wild in 2018. Each bird was tagged so the team can study how they live and breed once they're released. This important work happening out of sight of zoo guests may be this Texas species' best shot at survival.
Need a break from the summer sun? Tuck away and see bats up close at the McGovern Children's Zoo.
Bats have been found all over our state, and they're one of the most important species we have.
Texas actually has the largest known bat colony in the world. Bracken Cave Preserve near San Antonio is believed to be home to 15 million bats. Our state also claims the largest urban bat colony. The Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin is where more than 1.5 million bats live. To learn how the Houston Zoo is helping bats, the boys and I headed to one of the Houston area's largest colonies at the Waugh Bridge. This is one of our favorite places to go to learn so much about the bats that we have, and there's so many different types here.
There are. In fact, Texas actually has more species of bats than any other state in the Union. We've got 30 different species in Texas and 11 different species right here in Houston. So look right here in this crevice when I shine the light up there. What do you see?
Bats.
Now let me show you something really cool. Do you see every now and then a little bitty pink body?
Yes.
There's babies in there right now, and it takes about a month before they're strong enough to eat and fly on their own.
Bats sometimes kind of get a bad rap, right? I mean, they might carry diseases, they bite. Let's set the record straight.
They are actually such important animals for us to have. These bats here at the Waugh Bridge are insect eaters. This colony alone is going to eat 2 tons of insects every night. These guys are pest control. There are fruit-eating bats that are seed dispersers. There are nectar bats that help pollinate. They're amazingly important to the environment.
What are you guys doing at the zoo to help save the bats here?
We actually have a team of people at the zoo that have set up acoustic equipment to record the vocalizations of bats around the zoo at night. We can get more information for researchers about what kind of bats are around here, how well populated they are, and what we can do to save them.
All just by listening to the noise that they're making, you know exactly what bats we have here.
Isn't that amazing?
Unbelievable.
I have a question. Are bats the only mammal that can fly?
They actually are, and I think that makes them very special.
Since they come out at night, how well can they see?
They actually see very well as we do. A lot of people think bats are blind, but they're not. They have very good vision. Another thing that they use when they come out at night is echolocation. Have you ever learned about what that is?
No.
They make a little noise that's even outside of the range of what we can hear, but they hear it. It goes out and it bounces off of a bug and comes back to them, and that's how they know where the bug is. And they keep making that noise until they get right at the bug, and then they gobble it right up.
That is so cool. During the summer months, I mean, what's the best time to see this kind of activity?
It's good to come out a little before sunset. Sunset tonight was at 8:25, and you see they're coming out at 8:31, so not long after sunset. Oh, guys, right behind us, there's a hawk.
Oh,
the bats are coming into the wind, and those hawks are going to pick off the bats, and they will pick the bats off right out of the air to eat for dinner. Isn't that amazing? I always root for the bats myself, but everybody's got to eat.
Yep.
The smell is basically their poop, right?
It is. It is. But they're so special, even their poop has a special name, guano. So, and it makes a great fertilizer. There have actually been garden groups that have come out and collected guano to take back to their gardens. So there's even an advantage to the guano.
I know, they're flying all over. You can even see them back all the way back there. Learning about wildlife is truly the first step in learning how to save them. Suzanne, thank you so much for teaching us about all these animals that only come out at night.
It's my pleasure.
Bats at location like the Waugh Bridge are protected by state law. So we learned that there are rules whenever we come out here. You're not allowed to shine bright lights on the bats or make loud noises. That could keep them from coming out. And never touch a bat. If you ever find an injured bat, ask an adult to call a certified rescue group.
Still ahead, the difficult search for an endangered species in a Texas forest. And it's not an animal. Plus, a peek into the brand new habitats coming soon to the Houston Zoo. But first, take action.
Did you know palm tree oil is in everything from candy and cosmetics to salad dressings and shampoos? Or that palm oil plantations are taking over land where animals like clouded leopards, orangutans, and elephants once lived?
So what can you do to stop the deforestation and save those animals? Take action. Read labels, choose local and unprocessed foods, and choose products from companies that are part of the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil.
The goal is not to eliminate palm oil production, but instead ensure it's produced in a way that does not harm wildlife. We've posted a link where you can find companies that use sustainable palm oil on click2houston.com/conservation. Deep in the Big Thicket National Preserve in southeast Texas, you'll find a place where many different ecosystems meet. Wildlife cameras capture raccoons, bobcats, foxes, and other Texas wildlife. But when members of the Houston Zoo team went on a trek there, they were searching for a small endangered flower, one of the most rare orchids in the world. The Chapman's fringed orchid only grows in small areas in Georgia, Florida, and Texas. Its delicate bright orange and yellow blooms appear in the summer for only about 10 days, making it pretty tough to spot in the wild. But Anna Land, the horticulture supervisor here at the Houston Zoo, you were able to do just that.
That's right. We were really excited to find a new site in the Big Thicket area where the Chapman's fringed orchid was growing.
I bet people will be surprised to hear the Houston Zoo is so focused on saving a plant.
Yeah, it's actually a big part of what we do because healthy trees and plants make a good home for Texas wildlife as well as all of us.
Yeah, which is why we also learned that the horticulture team is also focused on bugs. Wander around the Houston Zoo and you'll find pollinator gardens designed to attract bees and butterflies. Those bugs help spread pollen, which is necessary for plants to reproduce. Unfortunately, populations of these beneficial bugs are dwindling because of things like habitat loss and pesticides. So at the zoo, in addition to planting native flowers, they also work to save butterflies. Monarch butterflies make an annual 3,000-mile migration to Mexico, typically passing through the Houston area in mid-October. If the temperatures get too cold, the stunned butterflies can't fly, so zoo staff collects any that are found, warms them up, and keeps them safe until the weather is better for them to continue their journey. Nearly 100 have been tagged on zoo ground since 2016 as part of a project run by the organization Monarch Watch. Tagging provides information on where an animal travels, so protection plans can be set up in key areas.
There are simple ways that you can help pollinators in Texas.
Yeah, take action. Plant pollinator-friendly plants at your home, reduce the use of pesticides, and also buy organic fruit and vegetables whenever you can.
There are so many ways that you can take action and help save wildlife. As we told you, that includes just coming to the zoo. Every admission ticket or gift shop purchase makes a difference and helps the Houston Zoo support conservation programs in Texas and around the world. In the last few years, our KPRC team has shown you those successful efforts in Rwanda, Madagascar, Borneo, and now right here in our state. But that's just the beginning. The zoo has big plans for the next few years as it prepares to celebrate its 100th year here in Houston.
By 2022, half the zoo will be transformed. In 2019, as we've shown you, the Texas wetlands opened, showcasing true conservation success stories. In 2020, experience the tropical wetlands of the Pantanal, Brazil. The Houston Zoo works in the South American country to save jaguars, giant river otters, tapirs, and more. Construction is underway, and in a matter of months, you'll be able to immerse yourself in this tropical habitat. In 2021, a reimagined bird garden comes to life with a chance to feed the beautiful birds. You'll learn more about the Outwaters prairie chicken, plus the rare curassows and macaws. And in 2022, one of the most incredible places for wildlife in the world comes to Houston. The unique Galapagos exhibit will feature sea lions, sharks, sea turtles, and giant tortoises. Through it all, the zoo wants to inspire as many people as possible to take action to save animals.
This is why you get into animal conservation.
Oh my gosh, this is it. Seeing something come back from the brink of extinction is the ultimate everything.
Whooping cranes, bald eagles, alligators. Just a few examples proving that from Texas to places all over the globe, together we can keep our world wild.
It's certainly going to be an exciting few years as the zoo counts down to its centennial celebration in 2022. Won't it, girls?
Yeah! Be sure to bring your family to the Texas wetlands this summer. And when you need time to cool off, visit click2houston.com/conservation. There we've posted links to puzzles, coloring pages, and more that you can use to learn more about Texas wildlife.
From all of us at KPRC and the Houston Zoo, thank you for joining us and for taking action to save wildlife in Texas and around the world. This has been Saving Wildlife, Texas Edition.